Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Reiko, and I work for the my name is Reiko, and I work for the translation team for Call4. I'm going to be your MC today. Before we begin, just a little heads up. Can you show the slide? Thank you. The second slide. Okay, so just a little heads up. This event will entirely be in English, but you can turn on Japanese subtitles by clicking the CC icon on the bottom of your Zoom screen. If you have any trouble in turning on the subtitles, you can leave a comment in the chat section so that one of us can assist you. Okay, so next section, slide please. All right, so let's get started. Today we're gathered here to discuss the rights and challenges for the faced by same-sex international couples in Japan, especially regarding their immigration status. And just to start off with a little introduction to today's event, as many of you already know, in Japan, same-sex marriage is not legalized, which is a source of a lot of injustices for same-sex couples. But when it comes to same-sex international couples, where one holds Japanese citizenship and the other holds foreign citizenship, there's an added layer of challenges, especially when they want to live in Japan together as a family. Right now, regarding this issue, there is an incredibly important lawsuit going on before the Supreme Court of Japan, which we will talk more about later. And today we're going to discuss what kind of challenges that same-sex international couples in Japan are facing and what we, each of us, can do to alleviate those challenges. Today, we're lucky to have with us the plaintiffs of the lawsuit and their lawyer who are fighting for equality for same-sex international couples in Japan. We also have distinguished guests who have been vocal supporters of LGBTQ+ rights and have contributed greatly to this cause. I'll ask each of you to briefly introduce yourself to our audience. So Kohei-san, Andrew-san, can you introduce yourself, please?
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining. And thank you for Call4 and everyone for coordinating this event. And then also we wanted to thank Mitsun-san especially for giving us time and joining this event. Thank you.
Okay, and Andrew-san. Okay.
My name is Andrew, and the one thing that I guess we didn't directly say is that we are a dual national, international couple, been together for almost 20 years, going to be 20 years this fall. And we, of course, are the plaintiffs in this lawsuit that we're hoping to get before the Supreme Court of Japan. Thank you.
Thank you. Then Suzuki-sensei, onegaishimasu.
Hello, everyone. My name is Masako Suzuki. I'm a member of the lawyers group for the case of Andrew and Kohei. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Mitsun-san, onegaishimasu.
Hi, hello everyone. I'm Mitsun. Thank you for having me today. And I'm currently living in Sweden and run a YouTube channel Futari Papa with my family, which is my husband and son. So as you might know that Futari Papa means two dads in Japanese. So as I share our life in Sweden through our vlogs, especially for Japanese people. So our vlog is in Japanese. So I've been following this lawsuit quite a long time, so I'm really excited to talk about it together with you all guys. And also, I'm so looking forward to talk to all the audience as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Maki-san and Kai-san, onegaishimasu.
Hi, my name is Makiko, and my partner Kai cannot make it today, but we have from Rila's life in Tokyo, Makiko, another Makiko, and Mai-chan. And we are all from Lila's Life in Tokyo. And our group is called Lila's Life in Tokyo. And Lila is Andrew and Kohei's lovely doggy's name. We are happy to meet you all. Thank you for having us today.
Thank you. Okay, so let's dive into it. In the first segment of today's event, let's understand the current landscape surrounding same-sex international couples in Japan. Before we go into the details of the lawsuit, it's important to make sure that we understand the very basics of immigration status in Japan, which is a little bit complicated. So in order to do that, let's introduce a scenario with our guest, Mitsun-san. His scenario will help us explore the fundamental aspects of immigration status in Japan. Mitsun-san told us that he and his family might consider moving to Japan from Sweden. Now he's going to ask the questions he has to Suzuki-sensei and explore if and how they can achieve that. Mitsun-san, could you kick things off with your questions for Suzuki-sensei?
Yes, thank you, Rexon. Yeah, that's right. Recently, I've been getting more work from Japan, and my Swedish husband has lived in Japan quite a long time before, and he speaks French, Japanese. So we might consider moving to Japan. But however, we're always concerned about the visa issues because we are a same-sex couple, like international same-sex couple. So Suzuki-sensei, what option do we have if we want to move to Japan as a family?
Okay, thank you. So first, can you remind me of what citizenship your family members hold and also your marital status?
Yes, my husband Rickard is Swedish and I am Japanese. Under Swedish law, we are married, but as you know, under Japanese law, we cannot get married. And our son holds Japanese citizenship. My husband and I are we share the full custody of our son in Sweden.
Okay, thank you. So your son holds Japanese citizenship, so there won't be a problem when he moves to Japan. And Mitsun-san doesn't have any problem either. However, your husband Rickard does not hold Japanese citizenship, which means that he is going to have to obtain some immigration status to live in Japan.
What is immigration status? Is it the same as visa?
Actually, visa and immigration status are used interchangeably under many situations. However, strictly speaking, there are different things. Visas are necessary for foreigners to enter into Japan, whereas the immigration status is necessary for foreigners to stay in Japan.
Right.
And the immigration status can be largely divided into two categories in Japan: the resident status and the activity status. And the resident status is based on status or positions, which can be societal or family-based. It does not have any restrictions over employment. One can study, work, or do any other things as one likes. In contrast, the activity status designates the activities one can do, such as study or some specified work. Because foreigners stay in Japan for those activities, employment and periods of stay are restricted.
So it means that under activity status, if one no longer continues the activities, then they cannot continue to live in Japan. Like, for example, one loses or retires from the job that their status is based on. They finish the study in Japan, they cannot live in Japan anymore. And this is really unstable for foreigners in Japan. And so as my husband Rickard and I got married in Sweden, can he get the status of spouse of Japanese citizens in Japan?
In the case of an international marriage where one partner is Japanese and the other is a foreigner,
Mhm.
the foreign partner can be granted a spouse resident status based on the marriage, allowing them to live together in Japan.
Mhm.
However, unfortunately, things are different for same-sex couples, even if they are married under another country's law, like Mitsune-san.
Mhm.
And currently in Japan, same-sex marriage is not recognized, and joint custody of a couple who are not married is not
Mhm.
recognized either.
Yeah.
So in Mitsune-san's case, you have a child and the child has Japanese citizenship. So Mitsune-san is the only parent who has your son's parental authority in Japan.
I see. Yes. Yeah, I really wish that Japan can recognize same-sex marriage soon. Are there any other residence status based on family relations in Japan?
Yes, actually, there is also resident status called long-term resident status
Mhm.
in Japan. It is for those who are recognized as having familial bonds with those who are recognized as settled in Japan, such as Japanese nationals and the permanent residents.
Mhm.
It also includes foreigners in the case of heterosexual couples after divorce, and there's no restriction on employment. However, as I explain the details later, partners of same-sex couples are not granted this long-term residence status.
That is so unfair, and I'm so frustrated now. But it's so this means that foreigners in the same-sex couple has to get the activity status under restricted employment types and work hours. In contrast, the heterosexual couple can work without limitations and gain a stable status. That is so this is really not an equal treatment. It's because let me just talk about my story a little bit, because I'm living in Sweden and this is kind of the different type from Japan. It is so different from here in Sweden. I've been here for 8 years and got several jobs, such as waiter at the cafe and being a YouTuber. And also I got the chance to study at some sort of like community college here in Sweden. And this is because I have exactly the same rights as any other international couples in Sweden, regardless of whatever we are gay or heterosexual. I'm feeling so privileged now, and because if we turn the table, I'd be standing on such an unstable life, and that is, I can say again, unfair.
Thank you so much, Mitsune-san and Suzuki-sensei. Just a quick reminder for our audience, please feel free to leave your questions in the chat section, Q&A section. We'll do our best to pick some of your questions during our Q&A session at the end of today's event. Now that we have covered the basics of immigration status in Japan, let's look at the ongoing lawsuit filed by Kohei-san and Andrew-san. Kohei-san and Andrew-san, could you give us a quick overview of the lawsuit?
Sure, thank you. So we met in San Francisco in 2004. So I was a student at the time and he was working. And the year that I was about to graduate, I was looking for a job. And then the financial crisis happened. So, and then also during that time, the United States was not recognizing the same-sex marriage. So there was no option for me to get the marriage visa. And same as in Japan right now, I either have to get the work visa or have to leave. So so I was forced to leave basically from the United States.
And this happened suddenly. Basically, in late 2008, we thought that he could get a job. And then I came back home one night and Kohei told me that essentially all of his options didn't work out and he was going to be leaving in 6 weeks. And after that, I literally cried every day that I came home from work until he left on the 1st of January, 2009. So I found myself in 2009 alone. I came from a big family. I had a happy childhood. And my oldest sister was 13 years older than me. She had kids when I was in my first year of high school. You know, I guess just as was important for my family, all of my siblings had children, they had families of their own. I mean, it seemed natural to me that this was a high priority, and yet here I was suddenly alone. And the United States government was not providing any infrastructure to help us get together, and the Japanese government also was not. And so it was just a matter of trying to figure out what to do at that point. And the rest of our story from that moment on was just consisted of trying to figure something out. And the details actually aren't all that important. You know, I tried getting a student visa at first. I you know, heard a story of somebody who'd started a business and self-sponsored his own visa. So I took my own job, which was very stable. I worked for a state university in the United States and could have kept that job essentially for life. And instead became a consultant just in order to get a visa in Japan and self-sponsor myself. And you know, we ran into all kinds of complications. And probably if you had talked to me back in 2015, I would have said, you know, we've been very unlucky. Kohei graduated at the wrong time. I became a consultant to my job, and then my boss of 15 years retired the next year. And then because I was a consultant, the new boss decided, oh, maybe we don't need this consultant anymore. And so I found myself without a job because I had changed my status in order to get a visa. But then we sort of, especially in response to what people were saying to us. So people were saying that you know, they were treating our stories as if it were completely ordinary. And in fact, it wasn't just ordinary. We began to sort of realize that it was a story about discrimination. And especially once we got marriage became legal in the United States in 2015, and we had this opportunity to get married, suddenly it dawned on us that, wait a minute, if we had been heterosexual all along, we would have had green lights all along, and instead we had these red lights. And that really damaged us. And that was the genesis of thinking, well, maybe we need to change the system instead of just, you know, having it hurt our lives. So that's how we started the lawsuit.
Thank you. Suzuki Sensei, what has this lawsuit?
Okay, so as Andrew suggested, when this lawsuit was filed, no immigration status was granted to foreign partners of the same-sex Japanese spouses based on their partner relationship. In order to live in Japan as a couple, foreign nationals had to obtain some immigration status, which was not based on partnership, such as work or study. If they did not qualify for any immigration status, they had to give up living in Japan together. So the couple have to live as a couple, or they have to live separately. However, after we filed the lawsuit in 2022, the Tokyo District Court ruled. Actually, before probably it's better to mention this before. Actually, so that's the situation of the the international couple where the parties are Japanese and foreign national. And if both of the parties are foreign nationals, in that case, it was possible for one foreign national to get the activity status called designated activity status if the other foreign national has a job, for example. So given the situation, the Tokyo District Court ruled that given that designated activity status is granted to same-sex couples who are married outside of Japan, if both parties are foreign nationals, denying under designated activities is against equality under the law and in violation of the intent of the Constitution. So after this judgment was given, Andrew was granted designated activity status of residence by the Immigration Bureau. And also since then, not only Andrew, but other foreign nationals who are married to the same-sex partners of the Japanese nationals outside of Japan have been granted designated activity status. And actually, until Andrew was given the designated activity status, and after he lost the former status as the management status, Andrew stayed in Japan with the short-term status with the maximum stay of 90 days. He was not allowed to work, nor did he have a residence certificate. Actually, he was not recognized as a resident in Japan. So he did not even have access to public health insurance. The acquisition of the status of residence for designated activities has relieved him of these problems for the time being. However, the designated activity status is a kind of restricted status. The status itself does not allow him to work. Even if he gets permission to work separately, the working hours are limited into just 28 hours per week. And actually, it is not a status that is stable enough for a partner of a Japanese person to stay in Japan. This is why we aim for long-term resident status and we appeal to the Supreme Court.
Thank you. So just to summarize a little bit, so before Andrew-san and Kohei-san started this lawsuit, no resident status was given for same-sex international couples, but because they filed a lawsuit and after the Tokyo District Court decision, the Japan started giving out this designated activity status for same-sex international couples, but the designated activity status is still has a lot of restrictions and it's not stable. So that's why you're appealing the case to the Supreme Court. Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, so now we would like to move on to the second segment of our event and discuss our visions for the future. To kick off this discussion, I would like to ask Andrew-san and Kohei-san again to share your thoughts about the outcome of your efforts and also what changes you hope to see in the future.
So I'll tell a story that I had a chance to speak before the court, and I told them a story about a neighbor of mine, a man called Jimmy, who was a Black man in his 80s in San Francisco. And he was telling me a story about when he went to Texas in the 1940s. He had grown up in California, which did not have racial segregation at the time. And he went to Texas, where they did have racial segregation. And he went to go walk into the front door of a restaurant. And they stopped him and said, "No, whites only. You go around the back." And he was telling me this story 65 years later. what I wanted to express to the court were two things. The first was he was so traumatized by that experience that even 65 years later, I could see the emotion in him. And the second reason that I wanted to tell it to the court is the courtroom had two doors. And I wanted the judges to think about what it meant to go through one door versus the other, and how if they thought about things from their point of view, and I was assuming that at least some of the judges were heterosexual, if they were thinking about things from their point of view and they looked at these doors, they might well come up with an answer that said, that's a small inconvenience. It's a very ordinary thing if you live in Tokyo, for example, to be asked to use a different door because of construction or whatever. It happens all the time. And the inconvenience, the imposition of some small amount of less freedom is tiny. And yet, here was this man who was telling me something that clearly was hugely important in his life. That difference between an ordinary interpretation and the experience of inequality, probably 1,000-fold or even 10,000 times stronger. And that, I think, is really the core of our case, is to understand that when you make somebody unequal, it impacts this most important core thing in their life, which is their whole existence, the whole trajectory, the whole pathway of their life. So Mitsune-san was able to have children. He was only able to do that with his partner and have this life because he had infrastructure that was supporting him. That's what marriage equality does, is it provides infrastructure for people. And the thing that I think people are kind of need to grapple with more these days, I mean, you watch television, you see, you know, Matsuko Deluxe or Queer Eye on television, and, you know, LGBT issues are treated almost as a subculture. But really, there's this huge history. And I want to quote from one of the equal marriage decisions in the United States, where they said, homosexuals are among the most stigmatized, misunderstood, and discriminated against minorities in the history of the world. And that's really true. For hundreds of years, in fact, thousands of years, across all of the continents. I mean, Africa, the Middle East, Americas, Europe, Asia. Wherever you go, people are misunderstanding the experiences of same-sex couples. I even experienced this in my own family. I had my mother, who, by the way, whose family were immigrants from Sweden. I had my own mother talking to me as if I had chosen to be gay, and what that really meant was that I didn't want to have children. And so she felt that it was reasonable to treat me as if I didn't need the same kinds of priorities that my siblings had. And it was so extraordinary to then go to Japan and have the government of Japan treating me exactly the same way. I mean, there's this worldwide infrastructure of discrimination that's out there, and that's what we're really aiming for, is equality. For me, you know, long-term status, yeah, but also it's really about equality, marriage equality here.
Kohei-san, would you like to add something?
So from this case, we're like, so I know a lot of people who left Japan because of the visa issue. So hopefully after this, there will be a chance or the opportunity for other people to also come back, or at least have the option to come back to Japan. So that's what we're hoping for as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Suzuki-sensei, what future do you hope for? Suzuki-sensei, you might be on
Sorry, I
mute.
was in mute. So sorry. So actually, we decided to make an appeal to the Supreme Court because, as Andrew explained, we believe that it is very important to provide a legal system where the foreigners, in the case of same-sex couples, are not put in a very unfavorable position because of their sexual orientation. So, and actually, I understand that there are many international couples whose situations are similar. So as for those who are in similar situations and need legal help, I just want to let you know that you can reach out. Actually, sorry, we don't have a website or something, but you can reach out to our lawyers group or the supporters of the lawsuits. The members are talking after this. So although we may not be able to provide help to everyone directly, but even in that case, we can refer you to others.
Thank you so much. And now we would love to hear from the supporters as well. Mitsun-san, as an individual who stands in solidarity with the cause of this lawsuit, what are your hopes for the future?
Yes, I really hope a lot of things, and I was so touched when I heard Andrew's and Kohei and Andrew's story, and like Andrew said that they're not lucky about the timing, and then I sometimes say that I was really lucky to have the opportunity to get married and to have children, but I think, I mean, I believe that it shouldn't be on our luck. So our life is supported by the government authority, and so we have to just help each other. And as I'm living in Sweden, and it's so important to talk about the equality and equity in this country. Like as you might see the slide now, there is two questions: how people in Sweden think of equality and equity, and also hopes for the future. I think I can answer those two questions at the same time. And in Sweden, we place a high value on equality and equity, so which is linked to our valuing of individual freedom and dignity. Like, for example, in Sweden, we often hear the phrase "man får göra som man vill" in Swedish, so which means one can do as one likes. And even my 7-year-old son says it quite often. However, if everyone in the society did only what they wanted, the society would become chaotic, isn't it? But therefore, it is necessary to create social rules and laws, and the basis of this is equality and equity. Sweden also did not allow same-sex marriage. However, the law was changed because it was neither equal nor fair. And from 2009, marriage equality was guaranteed. It's been 13 years since I left Japan, but I spend my days forgetting that I'm gay. I believe this is because in my daily life, I'm not treated unfairly because of my background or identity or whatever. This has greatly contributed to my like psychological safety, that giving me the motivation to work and also the energy to raise my child. When individual freedom and dignity are treated equally and fairly, people's anxiety is gone and they are able to enjoy and also, like, how to say, celebrate their lives instead of just surviving. I strongly believe that by increasing the number of such individuals, our society will become richer in a true sense, and we will prosper as a country together. Japanese people are considered kind and have a lot of like a spirit of helping each other. That's I like. And so my husband and both love the country. That's why we are kind of considering to go back to Japan as well. But however, this is just only my personal impression, but it also feels like a society built on individuals holding back their own freedom, like their own will, and conforming or relying on tradition and existing ideas. So I hope that society, that is politics and the judiciary, will have the courage to change the law and make decisions that promote equality and equity, so that we can create our new traditions together in Japan. I sincerely hope that everything goes well with Kohei and Andrew, and I will support this trial to the closure. However, in the near future in Japan, I really, really hope that gay people can experience that ease and comfort in everyday life as we do as a same-sex couple in Sweden. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mitsun-san. Let's now hear from the special support group for this lawsuit, Maki-san. Your unwavering support and collective action have been instrumental in the journey of this lawsuit. What are your aspirations for the future?
Thank you for including us. And main purpose of Lila's Life in Tokyo is feel the court. We want to show the judges that people care, we care, and people are watching. And then Kai and I are in the same boat, Japanese and non-Japanese same-sex couple, and we face the same issues as they do. So we started Lila's Life in Tokyo to support the legal fight for Kohei and Andrew, so they don't have to fight alone. But actually, we are the ones who are supported by their courage and actions. The group has grown with the help of many talented people like they are here today, and creating a website and online bilingual events, etc., etc. And also we have been receiving messages from all over the world. Many of them are wrote about their struggles, angers, desperate, and frustration under the discriminatory Japanese immigration system. But then the messages always end with appreciation and support for Kohei and Andrew. So that's also really empowering to us as a support group, but we are empowered by the actions and the messages too. And in fact, Kain and I learned about the option of Teijusha from Andrew and Kohei's lawsuit. It's something we had no idea about at all before we met them. So anyway, we gave it a try and actually got a Teijusha last year. Thank you so much for Andrew and Kohei and the team of lawyers. So if those who are watching this online event, if you are facing the same problems, you are not alone. Don't give up. You may consider options like what we did or what they are pursuing. And please contact lawyers and our support group. Think out of the box together. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Just to add on to what Maki-san said a little bit, this is a QR code to their website. You can just read it now, or you can just Google Lila's Life in Tokyo, and then you can find their website. Call4 also has a page for their lawsuit, but this website also has all the detailed information, and the information is available both in English and Japanese. So please make sure to visit their website after this event. And now we would like to open the floor to our audience. Whether you're curious about legal specifics, personal experiences, or ways to get involved, we're here to answer your questions. And so please feel free to write your questions in the Q&A section or chat comments. We already have a few questions, so I would like to cover it one by one. The first question we have is, I think Suzuki Sensei can answer this. So the question goes, what are the legal arguments for same-sex marriage to be accepted in Japan?
Thank you for your question. So actually, so the same, whether or not the same-sex marriage to be accepted in Japan. So there are the other lawsuits, and also the lawsuits are supported by Call for. And the basic legal arguments for the same-sex marriage is that not to accept the same-sex marriage is a violation of the Constitution, specifically Article 24, which is regarding the right of the marriage, and also Article 13 for an individual to pursue the happiness, and also the equality under the Constitution, which is guaranteed in under Article 14 of the Constitution. And so there are at least as far as I understand, there are 5 lawsuits in the 5 district courts. The lawsuits regarding same-sex marriage were pending, and on one district court says it's not unconstitutional, but the others said that it was not to accept the same-sex marriage is unconstitutional. And recently there was a High Court decision for the first time, and it also in the judgment, the judges also said that not to accept the same-sex marriage is unconstitutional, and now the other decisions will be given. That's my understanding.
Thank you so much. The second question goes, thank you so much for sharing your story, Kohen and Andrew. My partner and I relate to a lot of your story as a Japanese born queer couple. I wanted to ask, what is Andrew's status now? How have you been navigating your status in more recent years?
So thanks for your question. So my status right now, I was actually the first person, I was told I was the first person in Japanese history to get a visa based on, to get a designated activities visa based on having a same-sex relationship. They had previously given visas to same-sex couples where they had sort of said that, well, it's not really about your relationship, it's about the length of time that you spend in the country and so forth. But I was actually told by a member of parliament that I was the first case, so I guess I'll believe him. And you know, that was a really big thing for us personally, because previous to that, you know, we had been in this situation where I would lie in bed and I would think, you know, I don't know what I'm going to be doing a year from now. I don't know if I'm going to be, you know, this house that I'm in, is this my house? Where is my home? Like, you know, is Koei going to be next to me? A year from now, or even 6 months from now? It was a very unstable situation. And at least, you know, getting this visa, and in particular with having the support of, essentially, you know, our case has gotten enough publicity that I think that the Japanese government essentially is, you know, responding to the public relations challenge of denying people equality to some extent. And so on that basis, we personally feel better. At the same time, I don't know, I still think that the fact that we're not just considered to be equal does weigh on us. And so when Mitsun-san talks about his experience in Sweden, I mean, that's a totally, I understand exactly what he's saying, and that's what we're fighting for, but that's a totally different psychological experience from what we've had, which has been more like, you know, sort of thinking that the world is crazy and nobody understands our experience. And, you know, maybe we've got a group of people around us who do understand, but there's so many other people who don't understand. It's you know, there's a goal here that I really hope that we get to. And you know, we're getting there step by step, but there's still ways to go, I think.
Thank you. Okay, so next question. It contains 4 questions, but I will just say, and then Suzuki Sensei might be able to answer this. This is about Supreme Court and then the current situation around it. What is the timeline for the appeal to the Japanese Supreme Court? What additional filings will there be before the court decides whether to hear the case? And then when will the court announce whether they will hear the case? And if they do, how long do you think it will take before they issue the decision?
Thank you for your questions. So it's really difficult to show the timeline for the appeal to the Japanese Supreme Court. Actually, we want to know the two. So, so the court hearing, but in almost all of the cases, there is no hearing at the Supreme Court, and whether or not the case is heard at the Supreme Court, and when it will be decided, actually nobody knows. And it is said but if we get some contact, usually in writing from the Supreme Court, usually it's not good news. And if we don't hear from the Supreme Court for a long time, probably the Supreme Court is examined to have a court hearing. So not to get any news is kind of good news. The timeline is, for example, if we don't hear anything for 1 year, for example, so then they may take up a case. I think sometimes it's the Supreme Court contacts the parties earlier than 1 year, even if the Supreme Court decides to hold a court hearing. But the timeline is like that, so it's really hard to expect, and it's not so fast. And whether or not additional filing should be done or additional documents should be submitted, it is also not difficult, but it's hard to decide. So there is no court session, and there's no timing to add some filings. And actually, in Japan, we had to submit the reason for the appeal within 50 days after we get a notice from the Supreme Court that they got the appeal. So actually, the 50 days had been over. So we submitted the reason around mid-January, and we submitted the reason and the 2 opinions from the scholars. So, and the Supreme Court doesn't like to get additional documents intermittently after the submission of the claim. So for now, we kind of waiting after we submitted those documents. But actually, the Supreme Court is for the Supreme Court, rather than the other lower level, the courts at the lower level, the kind of public opinion is very important. So that's why we think that it's really important. And we really appreciate that you have interest in this issue, and we really appreciate your support.
Thank you. The next question is in Japanese, but I will quickly translate. Several Renaissance began. Have there been any changes in your lives through this lawsuit? Also, do you feel any changes in the society surrounding you too? Can you please share with us, Kohei-san, Andrew-san, as much as you can share with us?
I think from my perspective, like Andrew said, before the visa, we didn't know how long we were staying here, what's the futures. So after getting this visa, I think we at least knows as long as we were together, he will be able to get a visa, complete his visa. He didn't have any health insurance or the residential status, but now in the Juminhyo, I don't know what Juminhyo in English, but in Juminhyo, we were together, not as a spouse, but I forgot something like living
Also,
together or something.
Yeah.
So there's that piece of paper kind of makes me happy, and then he will be able to go to hospitals and stuff when something happens. Previously, he didn't have it, so that was a concern. But so gradually, I think it's getting, these small changes are making us feel a little better. Thank you.
Thank you. This person also said that the experience of listening to this case has given me the confidence to live his or her life. So thank you. And then the next question is, maybe this is for Suzuki-sensei again. Can a same-sex couple hold joint custody of their child in Japan somehow?
Thank you for your question. Actually, it's a little bit complicated question because as I explained, so in Japan, for now, the same-sex marriage is not accepted, and joint custody outside the marriage is not accepted either. So as a result, it seems that there's no room for joint custody of their child for a same-sex couple. But I'm not sure if someone has pursued that possibility, but it may be possible because, for example, even if a child has a Japanese citizenship, if the parental authority decided outside of Japan, for example, at the divorce, usually in US or in Europe, joint custody after the divorce are accepted. In that case, exceptionally, even though the Japanese child has a Japanese nationality, so the joint custody after the divorce is possible. So, but probably no one has explored the possibility. So I don't have a clear answer, but it may be possible. Probably it's very difficult. Sorry, my answer is not so clear, but that's what I can say.
Thank you. Thank you. We can cover a few more questions, or if any of the guests we have today has questions, that's also welcome. Or just comments, impressions. When you make a donation to this lawsuit on Call for page, you can also leave a message. And we do read the messages, and even the lawyers do read the messages, and then they mean a lot. So even right now here, you can leave Q&A section your comment or chat section, or you can directly just send your comment to us so that other people can't read it. For Mitsune-san or Maki-san, if you have any questions, we can cover that as well. We still have a few more minutes.
I'm just want to say that thank you for sharing your story, Kohei and Andrew. It was so touched, and also I've been really feeling happy and also really ease and comfort here in Sweden. But also I know that I was born in Japan. I grew in Japan, so I had that kind of I remember that I didn't have the psychological safety. Like I'm so like nervous and I'm so like unstable for my mind. And then I know that contrast of that life differences now and before. And then I think for me, it's as an influencer, I just need to just keep continuing to talk about it, to mention about it. And so I really hope that everyone in the audiences also like talk about this kind of issues to the next person in your daily life. I think it's really important to just split that story to someone who don't know. So I really hope that if you guys can just help us and help Kohei and Andrew, it's not just only for us, it's more than 3 people, more than, more people in Japan is suffering. We just don't know that. So I really hope that your support just keep getting on this story. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Just one last question for Suzuki Sensei. Who can we contact to start a lawsuit?
So actually, if you start a lawsuit, probably depends on what problems you have. But so if the situation is similar to Andrew's and Kohei's case, so our lawyers group's contact address. Actually, it's for now. There we don't have the office of the group, so tentatively we put my office contact address on the website of Call4. So if you need, you can contact us.
Thank you so much. Can you go to the next slide, please?
Could I just
Sure.
So I just wanted to first of all respond to Mitsune-san and thank you for one of the things that I wanted to say before is I talked about this kind of infrastructure that heterosexual people can count on, that LGBT people can't count on. And part of that has to do with the law. So, our lawsuit is about changing the law and making the infrastructure available legally on the government level. But part of that is also changing people's understandings of what is possible. And so, nobody would have a YouTube channel about my siblings or my parents because heterosexual people having kids is totally ordinary. People see it as natural. And there's a really important job to get people to the point where they understand that what we are is the same. And part of that equality is not just legal, but it's also people understanding that difference. And the second thing that I'll say is in regards to the money. So one of the things that we're doing with this lawsuit is, we realize that we have this opportunity to make a difference. The way that you have to do things in this country is basically start one lawsuit. So we took it on, but we really appreciate, if people understand that the benefits are going to other people as well. And so, your contribution partly says like, hey, I've benefited from this. And it's not just, it's actually, the burden is not so much on Kohei and I, it's really on our lawyers who have put in a lot of work and have not really gotten a lot of compensation for it. So that's the primary it's to help out our lawyers for all their free work essentially. And it's a good cause, I think. So thank you.
Thank you. So just like Anderson mentioned, the QR code on the left side, this is, if you read it, you can go to our Call4 website about their lawsuit and you can make a donation to the lawsuit and your contribution will directly aid in the legal battle for them. Additionally, you can make a donation for Call4 as well. We work entirely on a pro bono basis and your contribution is essential for us to continue our work. And we would really, really, really appreciate if you leave us a comment. Like I said, we read those comments and they mean a lot to us. So please make sure to do that as well. So this is the end of our webinar today. Lastly, I would just like to say that we ask for a moment of your time to answer our questionnaire. Your feedback is incredibly important to us. When you leave this Zoom session, our questionnaire will pop up. So please take a moment to answer them. You can also find the link in the chat section right now. All right, so thank you so much once again for joining us today, and we hope to see you again in our future events. Thank you so much.